Hi everybody, Ali at My Safe Place here. I put on one of my favorite t-shirts this morning and it became the inspiration for wanting to put this video together. It's a Star Wars t-shirt. There's Luke, there's Vader, always recognizable. I was taken to see the first film in 1977 for my 10th birthday and loved the series. Loved everything about the original trilogy, have seen all of the sequels and the prequels, and really looking forward actually to the next one that's coming up in December. And the name has sort of flown out of my head. That's one of the symptoms I suffer from currently, is a bit of a brain fog. But no matter, we'll move on. So what the inspiration for this was as I've been working through the whole no contact thing with my mother and my sister, and no contact with my ex-husband now that my kids are out of the house and studying and doing what they need to do with their lives, and I no longer need to have legal contact with my ex-husband. I'm able to go no contact with him as well, which is wonderful. The whole Star Wars theme, though, especially the first three films, episodes 4, 5, and 6, in episode 6, you see Luke and Vader have a reconciliation right before Vader dies. Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker. So they have this true father and son moment, this true connection. And even after Vader is dead, he's honored as the father of Luke Skywalker and Leia. And you see his body being burned with great honor on a funeral pyre, with living people in attendance and honoring him. Luke, Leia, Han Solo, etc., all their friends, as well as some of the spiritual presence in the newer versions and the updated versions where they can add the CGI. The spiritual presence of Obi-Wan Kenobi. You see the young Anakin Skywalker smiling. You see a whole sense of reconnection and a sense that things have ended well, which is so interesting now that I look at it with this new perspective, because I actually think for some of us that reconciliation is exactly what we're hoping for and dreaming of when we have cluster B families, especially with regard to cluster B parents. There's this hope that somehow they're going to come around and they're going to validate us, love us for who we are, even if we've been fighting our whole lives, right? Just like Luke and Vader, that there is somehow some catalyst that brings about a reconnection and an understanding and a validation and an actual parental love. And I'm not sure that George Lucas got that right, especially the way they portrayed Anakin Skywalker's devolving throughout the subsequent films that were basically the prequels to the first three, where you see a lot of Anakin's troubling responses to things like the death of his mother and his becoming the anger and allowing the anger to take over, and his treatment of his friends and loved ones around him, and how he devolves, and he starts to look very cluster B to me. Very, very interesting if you look at it from a psychological point of view that way in terms of the character. So I don't know that we can look at that as a ray of hope for those of us who have cluster B family members that we're hoping to reconcile with. It used to be a tremendous source of hope for me seeing that. And now I kind of think of it as a bit of an invention, that wish for the happy ending that all of us want and that many of us never get. And so in that sense, I actually think that Charlotte Bronte, and I'm sorry, I'm a former high school English teacher, so I can't help it. I love that book. I love Jane Eyre. In Jane Eyre, at a certain point, Jane is called back to attend to her dying Aunt Reed, has called and wants her to return home. And I think that there's this hope in Jane that there's going to be a reconciliation, but there's a much more realistic sense that she has to go and speak to her Aunt Reed for herself and not necessarily for what she might get from her Aunt Reed. And in the end, she, of course, isn't validated or loved by her Aunt Reed. Even on her deathbed, Aunt Reed is just as abusive and nasty. And it's almost, it seems to me, as the storyline goes, Aunt Reed tells Jane that she has deprived Jane of meeting a family member who would actually have loved her and adopted her and would have made her rich. So in a sense, it was Aunt Reed's last attack on Jane, and there was no reconciliation, but that Jane was able to take that lack of reconciliation and work it through and actually still be able to come out on top and to forgive her. And to me, that's much more likely what those of us with cluster B families can hope for. I don't ever see, and this is true for me and it may not be true for you, I don't ever see my mother or my sister coming to a place where they say something along the lines of, I'm sorry, or even remotely take any responsibility for anything that may have happened. Not that I would necessarily break no contact, even if something terrible were happening. I think that enough has happened to show me who they really are. And I'm not sure I would have the strength of a Jane Eyre to go forward and sit at their deathbed and take whatever last hit they want to give me. I'm not sure I would actually have that kind of strength. But I really appreciate where Charlotte Bronte was going with this and the development of Jane Eyre as a character and not necessarily having a happy resolution to that particular portion of the storyline. I think that that was really real and really true. And I think that that's very close to what a lot of us will have to come to terms with in terms of dealing with cluster B families who have scapegoated us and with whom we have chosen to go no contact. I'm not sure we're ever going to get the Luke and Vader reconciliation, although it's something lovely to hope for and pray for and wish for. I think it's much more realistic to expect the Jane Eyre version with Aunt Reed. And I think that that's okay. I think that those stories of reconciliation are still worth looking at, worth understanding, if only to get our own sense of where we sit with all of this, how we feel about the people who are supposed to love us and don't, because of whatever has gone on in their lives, and whether we can come to a place of forgiveness of them, even if we don't have the validation coming back. I think that that's a valuable question as well. Would I actually want to go there? And I'm certainly not one to talk about forgiving my mother, not yet. I'm certainly not there. I know people say forgiveness is the gift you give yourself, and maybe I'm not ready to give myself that gift yet. I don't know. And I know people who have had much tougher journeys than mine. I understand that cluster B is on a continuum, and on that continuum, I know that my situation was not nearly as bad as many people. So I think the forgiveness thing is definitely on me, and it's part of my journey, and I hope I get there. But I'm also willing to work through whatever I need to work through to get there. Anyway, I digress. Sorry. Yeah, so I just wanted to put that out there because I felt a little inspired. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.